This is classical Greece lecture covering roughly the 5th century BC, the 400s. I might break it into two short lectures. I'm going to keep it very short and simple. So what we're doing here essentially is the rise and fall of the city-state of Athens, which will become during the 5th century the most powerful of the Greek city-states. All right, so the key element here is the rise of the Persian Empire. The Persians come from what is now modern Iran, and in the 7th and 6th centuries BC, the Persians will conquer the entire Middle East, including Egypt, and will invade all the way up to the Aegean Sea. If you've looked at your map on the previous PowerPoints, you'll see that Greece, ancient Greece, surrounds the Aegean Sea, right? It's not just that what we see as traditional modern Greece. It surrounds the Aegean Sea. So those eastern parts of ancient Greece on the eastern shores of the Aegean have been conquered by the Persians in the 6th century BC. And what Athens will do is send money and aid to some of those city-states who are trying to revolt against the Persians. They want to retain their independence as city-states, and the Athenian citizens decide we're going to help. That gets Persia mad, so the Persians decide we're going to punish Greece. So we're going to punish Athens, sorry. So in 490 BC, we have the first of the Persian Wars. And in this case, the Persians are going to send a fleet with an army on the fleet, and they're going to attack Athens. They're going to land and attack Athens. They figure defeat them and punish them for helping these rebellious Greek states. It's basically Athens versus a Persian punitive army. The other Greek states are like, well, God, Persia's huge. We're going to mind our own business. We're out of this. So the Athenians are sort of on their own, and the Persians sail over using mostly Phoenician ships, okay, and land about 26 miles from Athens at a place called Marathon. Now here's the test, okay. If you looked at the previous slide, you've seen the idea of the hoplite, which is the citizen soldier. So basically, in Greece, the citizens of the city-states, one of their duties, right, is to defend the city. And that means they have to be a hoplite, a part-time soldier. Persians are warriors. It's a warrior culture, very traditional, ancient warrior culture. Many of their soldiers have been training to be nothing but warriors from childhood. So how are a bunch of carpenters and potters and other people going to defeat a great warrior army? How can they stand up to them? But this is where the importance comes in, the significance of the hoplite, of this technique, which will be effective for Western warfare for a long time. And that is, they train a few times a year, and they train to operate as a disciplined unit. Instead of a bunch of individuals on a battlefield all trying to kill the other guy's warriors, and it's all about me and how many people I can kill and how heroic I am, they train as a unit. They march and fight together. You can see the picture on the first slide. You should be following the slideshow as I'm talking, hopefully. A row of guys with spears and shields. They fight in a formation. They fight as a disciplined way and train that way in order to make up for the fact that they're just very basic skills. And what happens is when they meet at Marathon, the training and discipline of the hoplites defeats the individualistic warriors, and the Persians are defeated at Marathon and forced to withdraw. So the first war is a failure for Persia. Athens prepares for a second war by building a navy. They realize the Persians can just land and attack any time they want, as long as the Athenians don't have much of a navy. So they build a navy. Now this is essentially hoplites at sea. These are galleys with rowers. These rowers can also fight when the boats come together. So it's still hoplites, but they are sailors on ships, and designed that way. And Athens is going to build the biggest navy in Greece, and they're going to be a naval power as they protect not only themselves but also various Greek colonies from Persians and others. This time in the year 480, it will be a major invasion from the Persians. They're like, we're not just going to send an army over just to punish Athens. We're going to conquer Athens and anybody who gets in our way. This is full-blown conquest with a huge army and all of their navy. The Persians mean business this time. And the fact that this is a big invasion, it's going to march. They can't just land on a beach like a regular army because it's too huge. So the army is going to march all the way across from the north and down through Greece and invade from the north, meaning they're going to be marching through virtually all of the Greek city-states. Which means what happens is the Greeks now ally, and it's one thing we're going to find, it's very hard to get the Greeks to all work together. You saw how different and radically different the different city-states were. So, we have an alliance, and what has happened is the Greek fleet, the Greek navy, will be led by Athens. The army, the combined armies of the Greek city-states will be led by Sparta, being the best soldiers. And that combination will be successful. The Persians will invade, and the Spartan-led army will defeat the Persians, and the Athenian-led navy will defeat the Persian navy, and that major invasion's defeated. Sounds good. And what happens here is then this alliance of Greek city-states, which is called the Delian League, that is also on this slide, the Delian League, will be an alliance of Greek city-states that will stay together even after they push Persia back. And their job now is to reconquer territory in the eastern Aegean and elsewhere that the Persians still hold. And our job now as an alliance is we're going to push the Persians out. So in a sequence of sort of campaigns over the next few decades, the Delian League will push the Persians back slowly. Which will take us to the next slide, which is called Empire. What's going to happen here is Athens, as the leaders of the Delian League, they have the navy, and they're producing much of the money. They're the biggest and wealthiest city-state. They are essentially going to slowly take charge of the Delian League and basically convert it into their own personal alliance for their own personal benefit. You will hear cats meowing from time to time. We've got 4 of them. Okay, I'm married to a crazy cat lady. All right, so the Delian League then becomes Athens' personal alliance, and they start using it for their own benefit. They insist that all the money, that the city-states must contribute money to the Delian League, and if they don't want to, the Athenians will attack them. They must allow the Athenians to put in fleets and garrisons where they want. If not, we'll attack you. And it essentially turns into an Athenian empire. They're like, well, we are the ones who defeated Persia. We're the ones who led the war against Persia. We are therefore the ones who are going to run the Delian League, and we deserve to get paid and be in control of it because we're the ones in lead. So they get a lot of money and a lot of power. They can control the trade routes and get money from these city-states. And they use the money to build up Athens, the Acropolis, the great center of the city, polis, city. Okay, there's a model of what it used to look like. It becomes this incredibly magnificent place. And Athens grows in wealth and power because the Delian League now is an Athenian empire. And there's one thing I might say if we want to look at history, is that democracies often like to have empires. If you are becoming powerful and if there's a lot of money coming to your country and if you're controlling trade, the citizens are like, this is awesome, do it. So democracies are not necessarily peaceful. It's like, if it benefits the citizens, they're like, yeah, give us the dominance of trade and give us the money. What will happen, though, over time is the other major city-states are essentially going to reject Athenian leadership and say, we don't want any part of this. This Delian League was supposed to be an alliance, equal alliance against Persia. You've turned it into an Athenian empire. So one by one, the major city-states, the ones that I've listed on the previous slideshow, Thebes, Corinth, Sparta, and some of their allies, one by one, they leave the Delian League. They walk away. Okay. Athens still dominates most of the smaller city-states, but these other ones are like, nope, we walk away. Which will take us to the next slide, which is called decline. Okay. Another distraction besides cats is I'm watching Manchester United play on television, and they've just scored a goal, so they're winning. Right. The next slide is called decline. And what's going to happen here is what starts out as these city-states leaving the Delian League will end up being an alliance against Athens. The problem is, remember, Athens has the big navy. They are controlling the trade routes. And countries, especially, city-states, especially Corinth. Remember Corinth. If you look back at the other slideshow, they're the city-state who have an oligarchy of merchants. Their wealth, everything they have is based on trade, okay? And they're being strangled out by the Athenians dominating everything. And so Corinth and other cities sort of say, we've got to stop the Athenians. We can't just walk away and not be part of the Delian League. We've also basically got to say, we've got to stop them. They're just taking everything over. And Corinth and other countries eventually, and the city-states, eventually persuade Sparta to join. Sparta finally realizes, yeah, Athens is just going to take us all over. Sparta's the main soldiers, because they're that military-style city-state. Helots doing all the work, Spartan soldiers. And if you can get the Spartans on your side, you've got a really good chance of winning. So Corinth and these other city-states ally with Sparta, and we have what's called the Peloponnesian League. Remember, the Peloponnesus is the area where Corinth and Sparta are. And so they're the Peloponnesian League versus the old Delian League. I have a slide. You can see the Delian League is a lot of the smaller city-states in orange, and then the Peloponnesian League is Thebes, Corinth, and Sparta. Thebes will join with Corinth and Sparta and their allies. Both sides, ironically, talk to Persia and say, hey, do you want to help us? You know, because Persia's like, they think Persia would love to help defeat somebody. The Persians are smart, though. They say, if we get tied up too directly in here, we might end up having everybody against us. So the Persians stand out and say, we'll just let the Greeks kill each other. We won't pick side. It is a stalemate for about 30 years. The Spartan-led Peloponnesians are able to dominate most of the land campaigns, but the Athenians dominate the sea, and they can land armies wherever they want and then destroy things, and then get back on the ships and go somewhere else. The Spartans can march around and destroy things. So it's a very destructive stalemate because their strengths are in different places. So it remains a stalemate for 30 years. And what's going to happen here is the Athenians are going to get a little bit more radical. It's going to sort of lead to their defeat, really. As the war continues, Athenian citizens are getting more and more angry at, the destruction and the death. And what happens is, I don't think I have the word on the slide, but look at the word demagogue, um, which is a sort of popular speaker. You have demagogues who will use this anger from warfare and the death and destruction and work on people's emotions. That's the main success of a politician called a demagogue, is they work on emotion more than reason. And so they build up the anger and resentment and bitterness and hate of the war to really try and get themselves in power and get a popular following. The downside of it is anybody who gets in their way, right? You can get the popular anger and fear behind you, that people who disagree with the demagogues, who want a more reasoned approach, maybe say, let's try and find an end to this war, or let's not do this crazy military campaign, they get turned on by the mob, the angry mob, and might be exiled or thrown in jail or something like that. So it has an ugly side, right? That the use of fear and anger to keep your opponents down and to rile up the mob to get where you want. And what this happens is the Athenians decide they're going to take a risk. This is about 404, I think, around 404 BC, 405, 404 BC. Towards the end, that they're going to take a huge gamble. The Athenian citizens go for this. We're going to make a big gamble, put everything in the pot. This is, again, one of those things where if you had reasoned discussion and not just some demagogue saying, we're going to do this, you might be able to get a more weighted analysis of the situation. But it's like, everybody gets ordered, we're going to do this. What they're going to do is they're going to attack the city of Syracuse in Sicily. Syracuse in Sicily. Again, look at the map of colonies, the very end of the previous slideshow, which shows all the colonies around the Mediterranean. The island of Sicily is right in the middle of the Mediterranean, perfectly located to control all trade, especially east and west. And the city-state of Syracuse, which has been founded there, is the wealthiest city-state in Sicily, it's becoming one of the wealthiest on a level with Athens and Corinth and Thebes, really. And so they're controlling a lot of Mediterranean trade. And what they're doing is, because they're originally a colony of Corinth, is they are trading with Corinth and the Peloponnesian League. So the Peloponnesian League are getting a lot of supplies and a lot of support from incredibly wealthy Sicily, led by Syracuse. So what the Athenians decide to do is get everything they've got, ships, men, and attack Sicily, attack Syracuse. We're sending everything over there. In a way, that's it's a good idea. If you can defeat Syracuse and cut off Sicily, you've cut off supplies to the Peloponnesian League, and you've got their supplies. On the other hand, you're bringing in a huge wealthy area and one of the wealthiest city-states against you into the war. So you're adding to your enemies. But they said, no, we're just going to take them out. So they go and attack Syracuse. The Syracuse ask for help. They do get some Spartan, mostly officers and generals, but that's enough. With Spartan generals and the Syracuse hoplites, they defeat the Athenian army, actually burn many of their ships, and the Athenians suffer a crushing defeat in Syracuse. Now with their fleet gone and their army defeated, and with Syracuse now fully in the war, not just sending supplies, but fully in the war, right? The odds are massively tilted against Athens. And they're going to lose pretty quickly after this. And in 404, Athens will be put under siege and they will surrender. And basically, the peace treaty is that Athens must dismantle its walls, so it's helpless in a war. No Delian League, and they're only allowed enough ships to defend themselves. So their democracy is ended, it's limited, the assembly is limited to the 5,000 wealthiest citizens, not just all of them. And they're right, they have a little oligarchy above that. So the democracy, which had been just in favor of building an empire and then in favor of attacking Syracuse, is like, no, you're going to limit it to the leading citizens and you're going to be a little bit less aggressive and crazy. And just in case you get aggressive, you have no city walls. It ends Athens as a political military power, right? No walls, small fleet, right? And no citizens seeking empire. It will remain the wealthiest city-state in Greece, right? It lost the war, but it's still this big, massive trading city. So Athens is sort of unique. We're no longer playing power politics and military. Still a big, wealthy city-state. Still very, very influential. Sparta will dismantle the Peloponnesian League. They've learned their lesson, saying, nah, no peacetime empires. So we have no leagues. And hopefully peace. However, at this point, I've got just a few minutes left. I like to keep these videos to less than 20 minutes. Getting close. This might be 25. Let me go. All right. So in a way, by the time we get into the 4th century BC, right, which takes us to the next slide, we're back to where we started. There's no league, no alliances, lots of small city-states, medium-sized city-states. Athens has lost its walls, but it's still there. So sort of life goes on, almost like we didn't start. Except the Persians are still there. And the Persians, now that Athens and the Delian League are gone, begin moving back in and, right, trying to retake territory and trying to restore their power and influence. They're like, okay, the Greeks have killed each other, now we can start coming back in. And that forces Sparta, as the most powerful country, to have to respond. Everybody looks to Sparta. Athens can't do it. They have to look at Sparta, and Sparta begins the process of saying, okay, yeah, we will fight against the Persians and push them back out. But again, Sparta, it's like, if you're in charge of an alliance, it seems to be a natural thing then that people do, well, we're in charge, so you give us the money and you do what we want. And Sparta becomes almost like Athens and becoming a dominant over the other Greeks. And so this time Thebes, right? Last time it was Corinth saying we've got to stop Athens. Now Thebes are like, no, now Sparta is taking over territory and controlling things and money. So we need to stop them. Right? Persia's a threat, right? It's encroaching on territory, but when you have Sparta or Athens completely dominating you from inside, it's a more immediate threat. That's why you have these wars. So Thebes will go to war with Sparta. And in a sequence of 2 wars, I've got the dates up there, will actually defeat Sparta. Now, that's quite a surprise. How does a fairly big, wealthy city-state like Thebes defeat the military might of the Spartan military? Well, the Thebans have a commander named Epaminondas. He's on the slide, Epaminondas. And what he does, and this is going to take us to Alexander the Great. Epaminondas, what he does is, normally a Greek army, it's called a phalanx, is a huge, big block with hundreds and hundreds of men, all in this big, huge block, right? That big disciplined formation that you move en masse. And you got several blocks of these, but they're huge, they're unwieldy, right? Big, huge mass of men working together in a big wedge, but not very maneuverable, but pretty tough to stop because it's a big block. What Epaminondas does is he trains his Theban soldiers, many of them experienced from fighting in the Athenian wars and against Persia, to work in smaller units. They're still phalanxes, it's still these blocks of men, but they're smaller blocks. And you can then move these blocks around. They're much more maneuverable when you have a slightly smaller block of men. You can put some blocks together if you want to block a big block. And he can use his smaller phalanxes to outmaneuver the big Spartan phalanxes and defeat them. Epaminondas will be killed at the end of the war. But what we have here is Sparta has been defeated. And here's the key thing. It was not just defeated in battle, but as Epaminondas has defeated them and taken over the Peloponnesus, he has freed the Helots. Go to those slides. The Helots are basically the inhabitants of the Peloponnesus who do all the work for the Spartans, allowing them to be an army. The Helots are freed. The Spartans have 0 slaves, 0 supplies, and all they are is their little tiny city-state. So with the defeat of Sparta, the Spartan military might is gone. They're still there, they still have a little army, but they don't have the massive supplies of Helots that allow them to have a big full-time military army. So they, like Athens, have been massively, drastically reduced in power and influence. And with the death of Epaminondas, Thebes has lost its military genius. They sort of go back home. And ironically, what we have here then, around the year 360, 350 BC, is we're back to square one. A bunch of city-states squabbling amongst themselves, with the Persians looming on the horizon, trying to see where they can expand their power. What's the lessons we've learned? These Greeks don't get along very well. So we still have, in a way, an unresolved problem. But there's more than just squabbling coming out of this. The idea of an alliance of Greeks is important. And they want it. They just want it to be right, balanced, not someone's empire. And the idea of we need to defeat the Persians is an important part of Greek political need. How do we defeat them without one of us taking control over the others? And this great wealth that especially came to Athens, as well as Thebes and others, has created this really dynamic culture. So what I'll do a smaller video lecture, and we'll talk about the great classical culture of Greece that has come from this tension and war, as well as wealth and political awareness. And we've got this amazing culture that will arise.